Hello and welcome to the Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Rosemary Brown. We're going to have a great conversation today on the Legislative Report about emergency services in Pike County and in Monroe County, but specifically trying to deal a little bit more with our fire departments and hopefully help educate the viewers a little bit about how our fire departments work and our emergency services here. So thank you all for joining us today for this Legislative Report, and I think a very important topic, and obviously public safety is the prime concern for many people, especially in a rural area that we have in Monroe and Pike County. So I am going to welcome each of you individually, although I know you well. Some of the viewers might not know you so well. So Leon, I'll let you introduce yourself first and the role that you play in our community.
Hi, I'm Leon Clapper, Chief of Blue Ridge Hook and Ladder Volunteer Fire Company, covering 2 townships, cover Ross and Hamilton Township.
Thank you. And I know you have been so involved for many years, so we'll get back to that in a little bit as well. And George, go ahead. We'll let you.
I'm George Bodecker. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator for Delaware Township up in Pike County. I'm also a past chief of Delaware Township Volunteer Fire Company in Dingman's Ferry.
Thank you. And you as well have many, many years of experience and dedication to emergency services. And so we're going to be formal, Lawrence, but we also know you will let you give what most people refer to you as, we know, but Lawrence.
I'm Lawrence Buddy Buzzard. I'm a supervisor for Hamilton Township, Monroe County. I'm here in support of our local fire departments.
Thank you. And so oftentimes many people know you as
Buddy
Buzzard.
Yeah.
So I said to Buddy when we got here, we're going to be formal and say Lawrence, but many people know you as Buddy.
Correct.
So thank you for being here as well.
Absolutely.
So this conversation I felt was really needed because I believe, you know, there are parts of the state and parts of the country, different states that have paid firefighters and then volunteer firefighters, and our emergency services are very different, and also there's obstacles, many different obstacles that have been there always, and then ones that have continued to grow, and some new obstacles that have come in there as well. But I think it's important that people know how our emergency system works and how they can support our fire departments and give you a chance to show what we do here in Monroe and Pike counties with 100% volunteer. I'm going to say that one more time for the viewers. 100% volunteer firefighters, which in this day and age when everybody's trying to make ends meet, have maybe 2 jobs, you know, our tax structure and things that are really struggling with families, it's very hard to kind of add in that volunteer piece. But there are many people, as we said even before we started taping, that have continuously done this, and I know the 3 of you are in that realm. So Leon, let's start with you, because I know Blue Ridge Hook and Ladder does a fantastic job, and you seem to have a very dedicated crew that has been there for many years. I know you have, still have that struggle with the volunteer forces, but talk a little bit about how the company is structured on the volunteer.
Well, the hardest thing is we don't have a lot of growth in and out of the township, so a lot of my guys have been there for a long time. So you're used to seeing the same faces. But now that they're getting older and they're having families and the kids are in the sporting programs and stuff, it's getting tougher. And the hardest thing we're having is some of the new mandates with all the training that they want us to do, and then, for the state level to give us more money. But when you're making the classes harder and longer for our guys and gals in the fire service, that becomes a problem. Because you not only want them to get the training, because that's very important, but then you're trying to separate training that has to be done on the weekends when the kids got sports or what's going on. A lot of classes are Saturdays, Sundays, and then 2 nights a week. So that's a tough job, and I don't think anybody's really seriously taking a look at that. They want you to do everything and mandate it, but I think you need to look at what the volunteers do on top of the training aspect. We're fortunate our townships help us buy some of our trucks, but we're not overwhelmed. We don't have fire tax, and I'm going to say 80% of our funding comes from people that mail in on letter drives or twin causes or the half chicken bakes that we do. There's 80% of all the money that we get is pretty much earned by the firemen, their wives, family, and friends that come out to help on, like the West End Fair, the chicken bakes that we have at the firehouse and stuff like that, the quilting with the older ladies, and then the auxiliary having an inside flea market or craft show. So that's what's very tough. And you start looking at the numbers of the trucks today, you buy a fire truck and it ain't no $300,000-$400,000 no more. We're starting at $500,000 to almost $2 million a truck. And you got to replace them probably every 20, 25 years now.
Right. That's a lot of chicken bakes.
It's a lot of chickens.
You know, we were talking about that in one of the emergency meetings in Harrisburg about, you know, there's only so much that can cover, and you know, and the volunteer, you know, events that you have, and when the trucks become the cost that they are, and you know, anybody can jump in at the point with this too. But the reason the trucks are so much is there's a couple probably reasons on.
Well,
Maybe they shouldn't be that much. We could say that in some fashions, but because of heights of buildings, because of the types of fires that we have now, the different types of cars that we have now, doesn't that play a role in sometimes why
well,
these trucks?
you take what Monroe County was 20 years ago and you look at what we're at today. You know, before you didn't have the high-end houses, you know, the $1.5 million houses that are up 35 feet in the air, and you know, you didn't have 4,000 and 5,000 square foot houses before. You got them, and now you got big major strip malls in the townships, and you know, the traffic alone you have to build up, because now the traffic problems, you have to have more rescue tools, you have to divide your trucks in different areas, so if there's a problem on the interstate, you can get trucks going both ways. There's just so many more things that have happened in Monroe County in the past 20 years.
Right.
And I mean, the smallest stuff we got, we're selling off. It's too small.
Right. Right. So you have a whole scope of the type of emergency fire companies respond to that has changed, and the dynamics have changed. So now you have the cost of a truck that goes up, and so then the need for donations and the volunteer piece of it, with people, you know, sending in their donations or attending some of these events has grown. But for the viewers watching, I mean, that, you know, $500,000 or $1 million truck, I mean, that's a tough pull for
That's
raising
just
money.
a truck with no nothing else.
Right.
You're going to put another $500,000 worth of gear on that
Right.
truck, at
Right.
least.
Right.
And another point that comes to mind is that the vast majority of people don't recognize how much the mission, as Chief Clapper's talking about, of the fire companies has changed in the last 20 to 25 years. It's no longer just a bunch of neighbors trying to help their neighbors who would show up and pull some hose off the truck and do their best to save your property, obviously do their ultimate best to save your life. We're tasked with missions regarding utility emergencies. We're tasked with missions regarding vehicle rescue and extrication, wildland rescue and extrication, high-rise, confined space. Whenever it seems that somebody comes up with a new problem that is human-related, where people are at risk, their obvious solution is like the old Life cereal commercial. Let Pikey try it. Well, let the fire department try it. They're going to be the obvious people to throw that to. And so with that, it grows the size of the apparatus. It grows how much equipment you have to carry. It grows the cost of that equipment, because it has to be specialized. Many pieces of tools that we use are not adaptable from one mission to the other. They're very, very specific to what has to go on. And then you accompany that, as he says, with the training. By the time you're through, you don't have time left to fundraise. You're spending your time going to calls. When I joined Delaware Township Volunteer Fire Company 27 years ago up here, coming from New Jersey, we had 80 calls the first year I joined here. I thought that was I'm like, wow, that's like nothing. And now, 25 years later, we're doing 300 and something alarms a year. And I know that on their end at Blue Ridge, their responses over 25 years have certainly grown tremendously. Yeah. That's also a huge strain, from one response every 4 or 5 days to 2, 3, 4 responses a day.
Right. Well, and like you said too, you know, the size of these trucks and the manpower and the volunteers that need to be on the truck, which is another kind of thing that we were talking about, just to have the right amount of guys or girls on firefighters on the truck is tough, right? To even get that on-call piece of it when a fire would hit. I mean, I would think part of the commuter population plays a significant role too, because they're not available during, you know, they might be in New York or New Jersey working their full-time job.
That is very true. And what the fire service did, I'm going to say 8 years ago, I could be off a year or two, is we basically said, okay, we're going to take the geographical pie, who's closest to us during the day. Most of your commuters leave and they head to work at 5, 6 in the morning. So some are earlier, but the average, so we came up with an average from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on calls, and at least in Monroe County, we do dual dispatching with our next door neighbors, and our next door neighbors do that with us too. Because you just don't know how many men or women you're going to have out at that call.
Right.
So, and then your normal fire now, when you used to have a fire before, when your structures were smaller, you went in with 1 or 2 companies and you were there. Well, now our structures are bigger. There's no water in half the developments where there's really big houses, so everything's tanker shuttle. So now you got big tanks that are 3,000, 3,500 gallons of water. A big fire you're calling, it's no more 1, 2 fire companies. It could be up to 5, 6 fire companies, 7, depending upon how much water you need and the different water supplies that need to be set up. We had the motel fire out there, the Pocono View. We had 20 tankers that night because we didn't have water for a motel. So when you start talking 20 tankers, you're probably talking 18 different fire companies from all over the counties to come help us. And I know at the Blakesley fire, we were all the way up to the Blakesley Inn, and we send our trucks out. So if there's stuff in Monroe County, we don't just cover Hamilton or Ross.
Kind of a joint.
Yeah, and then we actually, with the 33 now, because of the way it's set up, we literally run down and help Plainfield in Wind Gap because of the wall that's up, and if somebody's trapped, you know, they have to come all the way up to Saylorsburg, where we can just get right on at Saylorsburg. So we've done a lot of things in the volunteer fire service to help the communities, and really, we've done the education and haven't really shared it with a lot of people to know what we do.
Yeah.
Because we just do this on a day-to-day, every day anymore, it seems
Yeah.
like.
Well, and again, that whole realm of what you just mentioned is all volunteer. That whole realm, you know, so everybody's a volunteer force. And so everybody's, you know, I look at it as sometimes you wonder how it all works.
Well, the thing is, it's always evolving, and
Yeah.
and it evolves. Unfortunately, for all of us in the business, it evolves based on failures. Wouldn't you agree, Chief? In other words, once we see, when it comes to mutual aid, well, that time 2 tankers weren't enough. Next time we need to increase that box alarm or that mutual aid assignment. You know, the same thing on disaster response side. When you look at things that we do in emergency management, people don't understand within the community many times that they're relying on the same resources, the firefighters, the EMS personnel, to handle major disasters. So even in that era or that sense of volunteerism, we need people that are willing to help on disaster management side. They don't have to haul a hose line or put on turnout gear, but they need to be able to come to an emergency operations center
Right.
and work on coordinating logistics with the states or the counties, understanding where the fire department's going to go to those higher risk activities during those large scale disasters. And so across the board, we see the same people wearing those same hats in broad roles, and that's where we really need help from the public. You don't have to fight fire. You can volunteer to work in emergency management. You can volunteer to work on the social side of the firehouses, doing administrative stuff to free up those people.
Free up so that this way you guys can fight the fires and do what you need to do. I think that's a great spot there. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with the legislative report. If you have children but no health insurance, you may qualify for free or reduced coverage under a special state program. I'm State Representative Rosemary Brown. The Children's Health Insurance Program provides benefits to uninsured Pennsylvania children whose families don't qualify for medical assistance but can't afford health insurance. If you believe your family is eligible, you should apply as soon as possible. For information on income eligibility requirements and how to apply, please contact my office. Welcome back to the Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Rosemary Brown, and we are having a detailed conversation on our fire companies, both in Monroe County and Pike County, and some of our emergency services. We're joined with Leon Clapper, George Bodecker, and Buddy Buzzard, as we like to say, Mr. Lawrence Buzzard, but Buddy. Thank you again all for being here and having this conversation. And the whole point I felt on doing this legislative report was really to help people understand how our fire companies work and the obstacles and the great work that they do all across our counties, but also how you watching can help the fire companies, even if you are not the actual firefighter, as we left off with George's comment right before the break. And looking at ways to say, okay, there are difficult things. They'll always kind of be what they are. We are very grateful to have a volunteer fire company because we know the cost. And there's been some crazy numbers thrown out there that if we did not have a volunteer fire companies supporting our counties, what that cost would be to each and every taxpayer. So we are blessed to have you, people that are willing to run into the fires and do what they need to do on a volunteer basis while still managing their families and also businesses, which I know is a whole, that's your livelihood, and then now you have this on top of it that many of you are dedicated to. But Buddy, we're going to touch base with you as the chairman of the Hamilton Board of Supervisors, and I know the relationship that you have with Blue Ridge Hook and Ladder is very good in the township. Maybe you could just talk a little bit, if you can, about the township's involvement with the fire company and how that works right from the start before we start talking about how people can get involved.
Well, we understand from a municipal level that it's with falling rates of volunteerism for volunteer fire companies as well as other organizations around the area, we feel that it's necessary to work along with the fire company in any way we can, whether it be education, funding, transportation, or legislative issues that might come up. We think it's important to show a concerted effort with the fire department and the municipality to show the strengths for our public, and maybe increase our volunteerism and get our job done and rely on our chief to run our operation. Keep an open line of communication between the two departments.
Yeah.
So
that's what I find very nice, that I can see that there's that, hey, listen, we have work to do, and I see it up there in Delaware too, and I see it, in these different townships with their fire companies really understanding. I think sometimes too on emergencies, everything's local. So on emergencies, they start local, and then when the local fire company can't handle it and the township can't handle it, then it keeps moving up the chain. And I think that the society to understand that, when it gets past a certain point of what that local township or local fire company is able to do, then the next resource comes in, whether it's the state or the federal government, and it kind of moves up that way. But all of as the emergency management director for Delaware Township, every township has an emergency management coordinator, and they're supposed to work very well with the emergency services and to be able to have a plan and preparation, and so and then again, that's another volunteer position, as far as I know.
That's correct.
I don't think anybody's paid for it. So and these are tough positions, and especially in the day and age when we have different types of emergencies happening, we don't know what these emergencies would be. You don't know what could happen in this day and age. So these are really strict, important positions. So it's important that the townships.
That's where an open line of communication definitely benefits everyone in the township, because ultimately our job is to protect the health, safety, and welfare.
Right.
And it's if we know the issues, if we can work on some of the smaller issues and then the larger issues that we're confronted with, from finances to, might be a bridge, it might be a road. If we can work
to help
together
get
on
the services
absolutely.
to the people so that nothing is blocked.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
And
a whole
also-
other conversation.
Right, and also education. Just educating the general public as to what our volunteer fire company does for our township. I think that's ultimately important too, because a lot of people just are not informed about, or they don't inform themselves about who fights these fires, who takes care of us,
Right.
who's behind us.
Right.
So it's
Well, and you hope
very
that
important.
you hope you never need to use
Right.
the fire company. But I think it's important, people watching too, if there's any concerns about an emergency service getting to their home, if, like you said, there's a road, there's a bridge, that's something that should be communicated to the township. I think that's a great
Correct.
point to bring out, because that's something that in case of an emergency, you want to make sure that you're able to get there with the least amount of stress. And time being held up.
I think a lot that because of the working relationship we have with Hamilton and Ross, at least speaking on our townships, is like the other day we had a fire. Well, it was an old brick house and it was falling in, the roof was down, it was unsafe to be in. So we called up, the township came out right away with the road crew, the backhoe helped us. It was a cold day wherever we were trucking, our water, we had water spillage all over. The ice was there, so they had the cinder truck there, cinder, and so we got that all taken care of. The house, they helped us pull out the roof and knock down a wall so we could put the fire out and go home without jeopardizing the men and women's safety of going into something like that. It's already down, there's nothing to save, but it still needs to go out.
Right, right.
So,
For the
you know,
overall safety.
we have that good working relationship, and I mean, that is important. If you don't have that, being a chief, you're just kind of out there on your own, and let me tell you, when you're running the business that we are, it's, you know, you're well over $500,000 a year in business. Fire service this day and age is big business. It ain't a mom and pop shop.
Yeah. Well, and as two chiefs, you know, and an ex-chief for many years, you know, what's the hardest thing, George, being a chief? Like, what was...
But what Buddy's absolutely right about that. I think the hardest thing is to maintain a non-political atmosphere and have those supervisors understand that you're not, and the public understand that you're not there as a political entity, you're there as a public service entity. And one of the hardest things is not the firefighting itself, but especially in a rural environment, is having the communication out there and the acceptance from the supervisors that you're not going to arrive on scene in 4 minutes when you have 12 and 15 mile response distances to go from when you get to the firehouse. Knowing that, having the supervisors understand how they can help offset some of those time things by, for example, where we are, we have a lot of state roads that we have to travel to get to the private communities that we're in. Normally, township road crews do not, unless they're under contract, plow those state roads. But if we have a fire call during a snowstorm, like possibly tomorrow, we will call our road crew on the radio and they will get out ahead of us with a plow, even though PennDOT won't be anywhere nearby. Even into private communities, which, as you would know, is not something you would normally do, but these are exigent circumstances, and their duty is to protect the public welfare. And the education from their part of talking about the good job. There are a lot of boards of supervisors, I believe, or political entities that don't always, not intentionally, don't always acknowledge the good work that their volunteers do. You know, we're very fortunate in Delaware Township, as you were indicating you guys are, that we've got a lot of support. You know, we're always getting asked, what else do you need? How can we help? You know, can they offer us some services? We have people that do the same thing, and we need a lot of help, more than just fighting fire, like the chief says.
Yeah, and I think that's the last couple minutes of the show. Really want you to talk a little bit more about that. And again, of course, donations are always nice. Just a nice donation sent in if you could recognize the importance of protecting your family if you, God forbid, would ever need it. But Women's Auxiliary, you know, a couple hours or a couple, you know, call and see how you can help. What are the exact things that you would suggest as chiefs, as township, you know, for people watching? Don't, you know, hope you don't just listen. I hope that you actually make the phone call or maybe send in a small...
Actually, in our letter drive that we send out, in our letter drive, and it's a shame that only about 13% of the people respond back in the letter drive. But our letter drive pretty much tells you what goes on throughout the year. It also says if you want to help do something, there's a place in the letter drive that you can do that. There's contact information. Our letter drive will be going out now probably in about another month and a half, somewhere in that neighborhood. And in that letter drive, it'll come out and it'll tell you, at least on our end at Blue Ridge Hook and Ladder, that if you want to help, you know, pasty sales, if you want pasties, there's a contact number for that. If you're interested in setting up at the craft fair, there's a contact number for getting a table at the fair. Pretty much of our stuff, and now, you know, especially with the internet and the websites, we're redoing ours. We're in the middle of doing that now again. So there's a lot of ways to reach out and touch us. And if nothing else, swing in one of the firehouses. We have one out that's located in Ross Township on 115, across from the old Sailors Inn that's now closed, or the new station we have on Rimrock Drive, right? You know, half mile up from the Snydersville Diner.
Yeah.
So we're there every Tuesday night for the public if they want to come out, see us. They want to walk through the station and see what we have to offer. If they got a Boy Scout group, Girl Scout group, or, you know, just call us, let us know. We can make a special night, open up so the kids can get in. I think the kids getting them educated in what we do and seeing the equipment's very important too.
Yeah, well, and I would think probably people to do a fundraiser, organize the fundraisers, organize the craft shows. I mean, you could always add another function in there that somebody
yeah.
could organize and do a fundraiser. And some people love doing that and are great at that, and they might just say, I'm doing this to help out the fire companies, and that's always a nice little addition.
That would be something that would be welcome for many of us across the board, because as the chief mentioned before, we're running $500,000 a year businesses now. And while there may be businessmen in the company, you don't have the time to run the business, plus run the fire company, plus run your own business, plus run your family. So the opportunities to serve, like, volunteer your time to help us with our books, volunteer your time to, if you have a background in facilities management, help us maintain our structures and our buildings. If you're looking at offsetting costs, if you're an engineer and can provide some consulting services for construction projects and things that we have, reach out along those lines. To follow his lead, Delaware Township, we're in our firehouse on Tuesday nights too. That's our drill and meeting night. We'd be welcome to show you where we have a need and what you can do to help us, even without putting on boots and a turnout coat.
It's great. No, it's great, and I think that's people just have to think that are watching in ways that their families can help, whether it's their children, whether it's themselves, anybody in what they're good at, how they can help. And I will tell you, there's a piece of legislation that I have, which I might have told Leon about, which is CPAs being able to gain continuing education credits if they had to work with a fire company. And so it really is a win-win for both the fire companies and also for the CPAs. And that legislation is one of the focuses that we're looking at to try to just give tools. So one less thing where you can actually, again, have somebody focused on that, and you can kind of do what you need to do, fight the fires, and then still have your family lives and your other, your businesses and everything on the side. But I think those obstacles that you mentioned about training, and we don't want to scare people off from being volunteer firefighters. So we don't want to scare you if you're watching. We want you to come and do that, and there are ways to help with the training and with some grants and some things. But I know that that's a focus for us in the legislature, to try to figure out ways to really help with those obstacles, so that we don't deter anybody from joining on and becoming a volunteer, because you have some of the people that have been there for years, but you need new people to come in.
Well, another thing we've done is we're redoing our bylaws, and instead of everybody's thinking that they have to run in a burning building, we picked up a few guys that had CDL driver's license, that drive delivery truck, and we were able to get them in, get them trained. They don't want to be in the burning building. They know how to run the pumps. They know how to drive the trucks. They've been a very great asset. I know some other fire companies have been calling me, asking me what we're doing a little different. And this day and age, you got to be different. You can't, just because they say you got to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, the guys going or the girls going into burning buildings can do all that, but there's people outside that can do the other stuff.
Yeah, that's great, and a very creative approach. So, well, listen, the time goes very fast with the legislative report, so I thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for your service, years of service combined here by all of you, and thank you for helping protect everyone.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching the legislative report. If you have any questions about this show or any other state-related matter, please feel free to contact my office.